Hi, guys, and welcome to another interview show, I guess. I still haven't thought of a name for this. With me here today, I have two lovely guests. There is Anupam Arunachalam, who is an author and illustrator, and we have Nakul Bhalla, who is a stage, film, and voice actor.
Right.
So, so basically, if you guys are watching this on YouTube right now, this is an edited version of the interview because the live stream exclusive version of the interview is available for my members. So if you guys want to get like the whole interview, if you guys want to watch more, I guess like exclusive content, then become a member, hit the join button, which is down below, and join my book club because that's where you'll get access to this. And the reason why we're here today is also because of my book club, which is the fellowship, because this month we are reading Jaya by Devdutt Pattanaik, which is basically a retelling of the Mahabharata. And that is also why I have these two lovely guests with me, because Anupam, like I mentioned, is an author and he's written a Mahabharata inspired children's book series called The Young Pandavas. And Nakul has actually voiced, or he's the audiobook narrator for the Jaya audiobook. And this version was one which also had Devdutt Pattanaik as a narrator. So they both have some great insights into the Mahabharata and also just audiobook recording process and things like that. So that's what we're going to be talking about. I'm so excited to have you both here. And yeah, let's dive in. So my first question to maybe Anupam, you can start. But my first question is, what has your relationship been with the Mahabharata personally? Like, what does this epic mean to you?
So, of course, while growing up, we watched the B.R. Chopra Mahabharata rerun on TV, while I was watching it, I did not know it was a rerun. I just thought it was being telecast on TV. But parallelly, my grandmother would tell me stories from the Mahabharata, from the Ramayana, uh, just to just as bedtime stories or nap time stories. And my main introduction to the Mahabharata, the way I still think of the story, is from that lens and from that perspective of my grandmother's rendition. So I guess it's a retelling that has it has the same oral tradition roots as the original, but of course, my family is Tamil, so there are certain variations to the way that she used to tell the Mahabharata.
What about you, Nakul?
Yeah, my starting was the same as Anupam's, and it was the B.R. Chopra Mahabharata which sort of introduced me to the epic. But again, I saw it as characters. I was young. I couldn't grasp it to the extent that I do now. So it was just a TV show for me. And then in 2011, this audiobook recording for Jaya came up. That's what actually got me into the epics suddenly. And after finishing the recording, I read one or two other works regarding the Mahabharata. I read some Ramayana parts as well. I ended up watching a bunch of theatre performances, uh, you know, uh, sort of traditional theatre performances um, in in Tamil Nadu. Called it's a form called Kataikuttu, and there are stories from the Mahabharata that they perform. So long overnight 8-hour performances.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this sort of became more and more immersed in the epics and started enjoying them more.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, there are so many different formats in which you can, like, I guess, in which you are introduced to the Mahabharata. For me, honestly, it was actually Jaya that introduced me to the Mahabharata. I like nobody in my family told me stories as a child. I don't think anybody in my family was interested, to be honest, in the Mahabharata. So nobody told me stories. I never read the what were those comic books?
The Amar Chitra Kathas.
Yes, the Amar Chitra Katha. I never
Yeah,
read
there were those
those.
as well. There were
Yeah,
those as well.
I never
Yeah.
read those also as a kid. So literally the first one that I read was also Jaya by Devdutt Pattanaik, and that's how I got introduced to it. But there was like there are so many different formats. So what was it about it that like fascinated the both of you, or that like intrigued you to create works of art related to it? Because I know, Nakul, you've also been in a theater like adaptation of one of the
Hmm.
stories from the Mahabharata, and Anupam, you've written an entire book series. So maybe with you, we'll start with you, Nakul. Like, what got you to say yes to the audiobook and then do more with the Mahabharata?
I mean, saying yes to the audiobook was easy. It was the first audiobook I was recording.
Right.
Um, and it was such a fun book. I was doing it. The guys who had started the company as well, Bookstock Audiobooks. They were it was a startup at that time. They were interesting, very enthusiastic people, and I think the idea was the fact that they came to a theater group to record an audiobook. Um, I think they wanted to see what they didn't go to like voice actors or
Hmm.
voiceover people. They came to a theater group for this recording. So I think they were looking for something interesting to do with the book, and and so it was just us sort of playing around, seeing how the background in theater can add value to a book about the Mahabharata. And then the play that I did was in Bombay, a play called Shikhandi, which was specifically Shikhandi's story from the Mahabharata.
Right.
And it was exploring gender roles and viewing it through a modern lens of calling out the patriarchy of the times and seeing how it sort of how the circle closed and in a way defeated patriarchy.
And what about you, Anupam? How did you decide to write this book series?
The Mahabharata, like I said, is something that I've grown up with. It's then it. I mean, I can't like you. You're saying that Jaya was your first introduction. Like this epic came at me from so many directions when I was little. Like it was in like these. It was a part of everyday life. It was almost like folklore. Like it was also this shared knowledge that everyone around me had, which so I was assaulted by it from all sides. So I can't imagine like being this the Mahabharata being a new thing at all. So I was very into it, and I'm also a huge mythology, fantasy, manga nerd. So, and I think like this story has so much of like shonen manga tropes, and it also has like so much like so many elements of fantasy and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
uh, I was always interested in like adapting it, but the
Right.
idea was to tell kids the story of the Mahabharata by
Right.
putting them in the shoes of the protagonists, which is the Pandavas.
Right.
And since it's a children's book, made sense for the Pandavas to be young when
Yeah.
the story starts being told. And to my surprise, I found so many interesting layers in the very short section of the epic where the childhood of the Pandavas is described.
Yeah, so actually that is one thing that I found really interesting, that you decided to stick to like the stories from the young, like when the Pandavas were young. So how did you actually go about like finding these stories, and like had you heard them like from your grandmother, or like what made you go and search for those particular stories, and how did you do it?
So I went through an interesting journey in doing the research as well. Of course, a lot of the story was stuff that I'd heard
Yeah.
growing up, but I also found out very um, interesting things as I read the text. And I read a few versions of it. There's a critical edition that the Bhatnagar Oriental Research Institute put out. Then
Right.
there's a very old and charming edition of the story that Kisori Mohan Ganguly wrote, which is open source. Anyone can read it.
Right.
Um, and while I was writing this book, I was at a party where this someone asked me what I was doing, and I told them, and they asked me like, "What version of the Mahabharata are you writing?" So I was very proud because I found the critical edition, this, and the critical edition of the Mahabharata is this thing that kind of has academic claims to being the original. So I told them like I refer to the critical edition, and they were like, okay, but why? Like, why do you think that edition is more important or more relevant than, let's say, an edition told in the South or an edition told? by dwellers in a forest or like, in some obscure village. Like, why does one version of the story kind of have this like claim to primacy over the others? And I think that was a great point. So from that time, I felt much more free to
Yeah.
write the story that I knew and I connected with and that I wanted to tell rather than like sticking to some text that I could not deviate
Right.
from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really interesting because that's one thing that I really appreciate about Jaya as well, because Devdutt Pattanaik basically
Mm.
has taken inspiration not just from like folk tales from all different parts of India. He's also included like Indonesia, where the Ramayana and
Mm.
Mahabharata are like revered. So I had gone to Angkor Wat, which are the temples in Cambodia, and they have like actual murals where they have carved the Mahabharata, like scenes from the Mahabharata in like at those temples. So there is a huge cultural influence in Southeast Asia, and so I really like that Devdutt Pattanaik included that also in Jaya, and I think that's also why he
Yeah.
gets hate, because those interpretations can be quite liberal, can be quite I don't know, different from like the
I mean, for the people who heard those stories and
yeah,
who are engaged in those stories, they revere that. Like, that is still like
exactly,
revered. It's not some kind of a
exactly,
subversion for them.
yeah,
Like, so, yeah, I don't
exactly,
know.
yeah.
Hmm.
Have you ever gotten though any like comments like this is not authentic for your
Oh
book?
yeah. There's like on
You
the
did?
Amazon on the Amazon page for my book. Like, there's this comment that the story was reading very well, and then I read this one part, and this is completely untrue if you read the text, and it's like, okay, like, yeah, in one version of the text that might not have been the way it's told, but in other versions, that's how it goes.
Yeah,
So
exactly. So then, coming back to your books, Anupam, how did you take such a like, because the Mahabharata is not exactly for kids. It is very like morally gray.
that's very true.
It's
Yeah.
very complex. Even when it's like, even when it is about the Pandavas when they're young, there are still a lot of like themes which are not exactly for kids. So
Yeah, for
how did you
sure.
do that? How did you balance like those aspects?
So another decision that I made early on was that I was going to tell the story from Sahadev's perspective. And
Okay.
since the story comes from the perspective of a child, it can get, you can take some liberties with not being like inauthentic to what the original story is, but kind of tone down the X-rated bits and stuff like that, because the Mahabharata is totally like, it's not PG-13. It is like
Yeah.
completely adult and completely, like, it's so nuanced. And so I toned it down a little bit, but also I kept the moral grayness. I think, in fact,
Mm.
I thought about, like, how a child would question what they're told about how things are.
Yeah.
And I use that to also think about the moral grayness of various aspects of the story.
Yeah, because I think like I feel like a lot of people underestimate children, that like they can't
Yeah.
understand nuance or they can't understand things, but actually they can. Because I remember when I was a child and reading books, it's not like I took everything at face value.
It's not like kids aren't intelligent, they just don't have context.
Yeah,
So kids are as like smart as us, but they just haven't seen as much of the world. So when you write for kids, you think of it from that lens rather than dumbing it down or like, yeah.
Yeah.
exactly. Lastly, before we jump into the audiobook section of this, which stories were like the easiest to tell and which were like the most difficult? uh, Within like the stories of the Pandavas, which one did you find like, or which was the most interesting
Hmm.
that you had to adapt?
So there's this, the way the Pandavas are introduced in the Mahabharata, like as kids, is very interesting because they are actually, Pandu, their father, has been exiled,
Yeah,
and with their with his two queens, and so they're living in the forest at that point.
yeah,
And when they're born and they spend their first so many years living in huts in the forest, like with other people who dwell there. So it was very interesting for me to kind of realize that these kids are not royalty. In fact, like being thrown into the city and being told that you're the princess of this place is very weird for them. So that was super interesting. And I also found the stories about how they, the kind of favoritism and stuff like that in the Gurukul, like once they reach Dronacharya's Gurukul, like that stuff
Right.
was fascinating as well. Like
So is
you
it like
can,
when
there's
they're
some,
sorry, is it like when they're training and things like that? Like how they're
yeah, when they
using their
train,
powers?
this, yeah, absolutely. And Drona is such an interesting character, man. Like, I don't know why people try to justify the like the things that he does wrong, because the Mahabharata just puts them out there and says like judge the character as you may. Like these days,
Yeah.
you have these people who are like apologists for Dronacharya, like
Really?
asking like, yeah. You see them all over the place. Like if you go to Quora, you'll see so many articles about this. But I'm just
Great.
like, that's what makes it interesting is that he does a
Yeah.
morally abhorrent thing. And he does
Yeah.
so many of these things.
So many, like one after
So,
the other. Yeah.
He's the
yeah,
one who
yeah.
makes them go and fight Drupad, right?
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah,
Yes.
He
He
yeah,
makes
has he has this ulterior
yeah.
motive of getting them to
Yeah,
yeah.
he's basically rating child soldiers.
Yeah.
But that's the those are the complexities we have to like look at and like enjoy, right? Like why kind of like justify them as, oh my god, this is like this was actually the perfect thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll get to the whole like morally gray aspect of every character because I feel like all the characters are messed up in some way. And then to glorify them and like make them out to be like these, I mean, they are gods within Hinduism, but like gods can also make mistakes. I
It's
don't
fine
know.
to glorify, but also you can like in the sense that you can glorify someone's qualities, like positive qualities, and be aware of the negatives in their personality, right? Like
Yeah,
one doesn't have to be perfect to be glorified. Like so,
exactly.
that's
Yeah.
the way I see.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, so now we're going to jump into talking about the audiobook. But we just had a really fun discussion in the members only live stream. We spoke about AI affecting audiobooks. We spoke about some of our favorite characters. So if you want that exclusive content, hit the join button and join my book club. It's a lot of fun. Yes, so Nakul, coming to you,
Hmm.
you recorded Jaya, the audiobook for Jaya, and you said that
Yes.
you said that this was your first audiobook that you recorded.
Right.
So can you tell us a little bit your experience recording this audiobook and what were some of the more difficult things when it came to recording this audiobook?
I think the first thing that we needed to work on, and I needed to work on, was what sort of cadence to adopt while recording it.
Right.
So, and of course, I being from a theater background at that time, I thought like a performer, and I was like, who am I in this? I think it's who's narrating? Is it Vaisampayan who's narrating
I can't
uh,
remember now who the
who's
narrator
narrating
is.
it to Janmejai?
Yeah.
Yes, correct, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I kind of visualize this court, this palace court, a yagna happening, and this large sort of space where I need to, this young prince has to be told of his thing before he moves on. This
yeah,
wisdom has to be imparted to him
yeah.
and to the people in presence as well. And so I was like, okay, the wise old man. Suddenly Gandalf pops into my mind. So it was like, yeah. So in my head, it was like I'm yeah I'm in this large palatial space and speaking to one person
Yeah.
and making it heard to everybody else as well. So, I ended up recording it a lot, like how like it's like at any moment I can say, Janmejay, you shall not pass. It's a bit like that.
Yeah,
I'd love to do it slightly differently now, but we enjoyed it. We really enjoyed it because it was something different from how audiobooks were being recorded. It was
right.
in the spirit of a mythology, so it had a grandeur to it. There were
Yeah,
there were sound effects, etc., added to the whole thing. So it was a fun process. We used to decide and then do and redo things
right.
while in the studio.
Yeah. How long
Um,
did it take to record the whole thing?
oh, it took a while, but it was done within a month.
Right.
A few hours of recording every day because you don't do too long,
Correct.
more than 2.5 hours, and your voice
Yeah.
starts to tire out.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so it took a
Yeah.
bit.
And what were like the more difficult aspects of recording this?
Sometimes what happens is you read something, you mispronounce it, or you stumble in one part, and this may happen even if you are prepared. And then when you go to re-record it again and again, you end up stumbling on the same part.
Yeah.
Okay, again, and sometimes it's tough to break and then you just start laughing, and it
Yeah.
all goes for a toss. So then it's good to take a breather, uh, have some water,
Yeah.
chat a bit, and then go back to recording. So it's even this sort of becomes the most challenging thing,
Yeah.
but it remains fun.
And then I know that your version of the audiobook also had like Devdutt narrating some parts. Did you
Yeah,
interact with him in any way during the
not at all.
recording? No?
Not at all.
How
Because
sad.
I think because I was in Bangalore, and I think
Right.
Devdutt was elsewhere, Mumbai or Delhi. I'm not sure where he was,
Right.
but he was recording in a different space in a different studio where he
Oh,
was.
okay.
So it was I sometimes heard his recordings,
Right.
uh, and the gray, we used to call them the gray boxes.
Yeah, but
The
they are
gray
the gray
boxes at the
boxes.
end of every yeah,
Yeah.
at the end of every chapter were narrated by Devdutt himself.
The thing is that unfortunately, this version of the audiobook is no longer available anywhere. I checked everywhere. I couldn't find it. And
Right.
the one that is on Audible is not very good. It's very, very,
And this
very
sounds
bad,
just
actually. And I
the
think,
amount of effort and thought that went into this one just makes it sound so rich. Like I would
yeah.
Right.
love to listen to it.
And the thing is,
Yeah.
I think that Devdutt probably has, like, I don't know, I think the thing is that this audiobook, which is on Audible, doesn't have the gray boxes narrated. So I think Devdutt basically maybe
Oh,
Ah,
told like audiobook like companies that like nobody gets to say the gray boxes apart from me or something like that,
right,
because this doesn't have the gray
right.
boxes. It just has the black and white pages.
Okay,
And so it's not
okay.
even
Oh
the whole
no.
book. It's not even the whole
Right,
book. It's narrated really badly, like really, really
right,
badly. And I wasted one credit on that on the audiobook.
right.
But like, how does that make you feel though, that this version doesn't exist in the world anymore?
I mean, yeah, it would have been nice had it existed.
Yeah.
Uh, it would have been really nice. I would have also, now that I know I did it one way and there are multiple ways of doing it, it was my first audiobook. I would love to, like perhaps do it again,
Yeah.
slightly
Put it
differently.
into the
So in a
universe.
way, yeah, in a way, a clean slate feels good also. But it would have been nice to have the version around. I mean, especially because that had Devdutt's voice. It was yeah, it had a lot of playfulness in the way it was
Yeah.
put together. So it would have been fun.
Yeah. But yes. Okay. So now let's talk about the Mahabharata itself as an epic. We've spoken like I guess like bits and pieces of it. But one thing that I do want to talk about, because I feel like both of you are huge fans of it, is the Mahabharata TV show. I actually haven't watched it ever. I haven't even watched one episode. So I don't have a lot to contribute. But I know that both of you are huge fans and have very, very good things to say about the TV show. So maybe we can start with you, Anupam. Like, was this like a Sunday
mm,
morning ritual? Because I think it used to come like on
yeah, for
Doordarshan
sure.
every Sunday at like what 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock or something.
Something like
So
that. Yeah, yeah. And it was a ritual. And back then we watched it. I had a very similar experience as Nakul, which is that I watched it for the first time as a child, and then I rewatched it as an adult and took away so much more. And I
yeah,
look forward to rewatching it in a few years' time, and like because it's written so well, like the dialogues are so beautiful that it's a very talky show. Like it's not like action packed as such. Like it's more about people talking, but that is done so beautifully and so well, and you get to explore the nuance of every character, and it covers more or less everything. I think.
Firstly, I think the idea, there is the show, and there is this beautiful episode. I don't know if Anupam told me about it or I told Anupam about it, but one of us told the other. about the making of the Mahabharata show, which is called Mahabharata
Right, right.
Mahabharata, right, which
Okay.
is on YouTube, and it's so beautiful. And they talk about the process of casting and how they decided to make the epic, and then how they decided to bring the writer on board. So just from the selection of the writer, Dr. Rahi Masum Raza, who wrote the dialogues and the story and the structure of it,
Yeah,
uh, they brought him on board. And B.R. Chopra says in that, it was we were looking for the best person for the job,
correct.
and he was like, and he says, imagine, at that time, getting a Muslim writer to write a Hindu epic. We thought people might have problems, but nobody did. And they said when Dr. Rahim Masum Raza came with the idea of
Yeah,
time being the protagonist of the story,
yeah,
we'll say time, is bigger than all the gods, the characters, everyone there. So
yeah,
time narrates the story, and it starts with "Main Samay Hu,"
yeah,
and that was, that it's such a creative, brilliant, thoughtful way of telling the story.
correct.
And then, of course, there are times when one thing I remember is Bhishma. Uh, he's for the most part he's this gray, white bearded uh, old patriarch, but because he's so alone, he's celibate, he kind of is the steward of Hastinapur, and it's his job to see it go into the right hands, and then so he's almost never at peace.
Yeah,
um, and so when it becomes too much for him, he goes to Ganga,
yeah,
mother,
yeah,
right? And those moments of conversation are so wonderfully written. And at one point, it's written, she sort of scoffs at him and says, like, what are you? You're this old man, and for tiny little things, you come to your mother for help.
yeah,
She really scolds him,
yeah,
and he realizes what he does, and he sort of shamefully says, that, yeah, I'm not going to come and disturb you now. There are those elements. There is, at one moment, you sort of sympathize with Draupadi for what she went through, and then you are, when Bhim says, I'm going to tear Dushasan's chest and drink blood on
yeah,
him, you're like, deserves it. Now the war starts,
yeah,
and you see the two tents and what goes on. Now there is one part where Draupadi is in the tent, and there's Krishna and the other Pandavas, and they're discussing what can be done. What we seem to be getting nowhere. She chimes in and she says, "Yeah, but it's I want my vengeance."
yeah,
And Krishna just scolds her, and he says, quiet. Like
yeah,
right now, we all know that you need your vengeance, and you were wrong.
yeah,
But right now, at this moment, it's not about you. Not
yeah,
everything is. You're not doing all of this just for your vengeance. Yeah. So every character is sort of put in their place. It's sort of
correct.
seen, while it's seen through their plight, and you uh, sympathize with them. You also see them from another perspective and be like, okay, but it's still not about them.
I
Yes.
think that any interpretation of the Mahabharata or Ramayana, I'm going to add Ramayana here as well, but any interpretation that does that, which I think like humanizes these sort of like godlike characters, those are the ones that I find the most interesting. Like
Yeah.
I feel like generally because these are like such, I mean they're gods, they're literal gods, but then I don't like them to be so black and white. I don't like them to be so like, oh, they are the greatest, they are the bravest,
Yeah.
they are the
And
wisest. Like,
and speaking of that, sorry to interrupt. I remember there's one part even Krishna is called out for all his
right,
strategizing
right.
and all his being, and who calls him out? Gandhari.
Oh, but
You
I
know,
think this is also
he
in
is called out by
Jaya.
Gandhari.
Yes,
Right.
I think this
Right.
is also in Jaya. Yeah,
Because she's like, for all your bringing balance and restoring this thing, what is happening? My sons are dying.
yeah,
You're tearing my family apart. You're tearing families apart.
yeah,
People are dying. You
exactly.
have this high level idea of, bringing balance and whatnot. You can
Yeah,
speak, but on ground, this is what is happening. And then she curses him.
correct. She curses saying that yeah,
Right, right.
your like kingdom or whatever will face the same fate.
It's about his what do you call it? His line or his
Yes,
Yeah. his line will
Exactly.
be destroyed.
The whole divine comeuppance sort of aspect of these stories, like how at the end of the Mahabharata, the Pandavas are trying to gain access to heaven, like they've done their renunciation, they're walking up the Himalayas and stuff. And then, like, everyone slowly dies, and Yudhishthir finally, ascends to heaven and sees that they're all in hell, whereas, like, Kauravas
Yeah.
are all in heaven because, well, they did their dharma well and they died on Kurukshetra. So, yeah, you
Yeah.
get to be in heaven. And I think these things are not meant to be, like, self consistent. Like, why does Gandhari have the power to, like, curse Krishna with
Correct.
such a terrible fate?
Yeah.
And it's just like, I think these are meant to show us the ironies of life, and kind of
Right.
like the way these things usually go. It's not
Yeah.
always life is not like self-consistent and sort of linear in that way.
And that's what, like, you've actually studied what is like the original or the scholarly text, Anupam. The way that that is sort of narrated, or like how does that also leave it up to our interpretation?
Yeah, that's the way it's always told. It's the story, and then you take what you will from it. And
Correct.
imposing our interpretations is the reader's prerogative. So yeah, we
Exactly.
do that, of course.
This is a bit of a controversial topic, and I don't know if we should go there. I'll see if I want to include it in the final recording or not. But what do you guys feel of the way that caste is depicted in in the Mahabharata, specifically when it comes to Karna and his story?
I think there is it shows, it depicts the discrimination, but I can't recall places where it rewards discrimination.
That's true.
Most cases it shows the discriminator, their act sort of coming back and biting them, uh,
Yeah, that is true.
Well, I
because
mean,
Draupadi,
Drona getting
cutting
Eklavya
off
to cut off his,
Eklavya's, yes,
like, it doesn't
um,
really come back to haunt him in
it
any way. Like,
it
it's just a
doesn't. But
thing.
I mean, who knows? He lost a better archer uh, uh,
Yeah, that part like pissed
than
me
Arjun.
off so much. Where
You
he
know,
just
there
like,
are many like this where they just
No,
talk
Eklavya
about
was
caste.
devoted to him. Eklavya was
Yeah.
really devoted to him.
yeah,
His favoritism lost him a great student, and
that's
he
true.
got the second best because of that. I mean, what his legacy might have been.
Maybe we can end the discussion when we're talking about the illustrations, because Anupam, you're also an illustrator. So firstly, there are like different I guess like different ways to depict scenes from the Mahabharata. I think Devdutt Pattanaik, the ones which are there in his book, are very, very unique. So like what do you have to say about that?
Yeah.
And have you seen any other illustrations which you think are really amazing that we should check out?
I'll look up the other stuff, but I think Devdutt Pattanaik's illustrations are just fantastic. Like, there are lots of places where people interpret them as being like simple geometric illustrations or whatever, but they are so good. Like, they are so iconic. Like, each of them. He's not just drawing the things that one might see. He's like boiling things down to the essence of like what he wants to
Yeah,
communicate. And Devdutt Pattanaik himself says that like his drawing is like an extension of his writing. And I'm a bigger fan of him as an illustrator than as a writer.
right.
Like, I think those illustrations are just beautifully done. They're so decolonized. They're so like so unique. And when you see a Devdutt Pattanaik illustration, it doesn't looks, it has this sort of like, I see another word which is primitive when it comes to like people describe this illustration as primitive, which is kind of fitting because like if you see some of the most beautiful graphic illustrations, they're the illustrations that cavemen left in like the back of caves, right? Like when you look at those, they're so graphic, they're so beautiful, they're so like they boil subjects down to their like pure essence, and I think he does that really really well. And in most cases he's also very restrained. He doesn't like, he doesn't draw everything. He's not
Yeah,
merely like everything that's depicted is a very conscious choice. And I also like how the illustrations are printed sometimes, off kilter. Like sometimes they have
yeah,
this crooked like feel, and
Right.
like adds so much personality. Like you can see it being drawn on paper almost. Like so
Yeah.
beautiful stuff.
And it's
Yeah.
exactly like
So
his text, because his text is also like, it really has boiled down the Mahabharata to like
mm,
very understandable and like readable um, prose. So it's,
right.
yeah, his art form is also like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yes, thank you so much, both of you, for joining me for this interview. We've been recording for almost an hour and a half now. So thank you so
Uh,
much for taking time on your Saturday night to record this. It's been really, really good. So yeah, thank you. Is there anything you'd like to like shout out, promote, or anything before we say bye?
yes. Yes. Look up Young Pandavas on Amazon, and
Yes.
they're they're quite well reviewed. I think, except
Yeah,
for the odd person who doesn't
they're
like
really good fun.
those
I binge
interpretations.
read them. Yeah, I binge read those books.
Yeah.
You know, Anupam. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes, yeah. So
they're really nice.
check out Anupam's book and books, actually, book series.
Yes.
And yeah, that is it. I will see you guys next time. Bye.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.